I found out my wife was counting down the days to my death, not because she loved me, but because she wanted everything I owned. And when I quietly changed my will, what happened next left her frozen in shock. Folks, Uncle Mickle here. And before you think this is some made-up drama or internet nonsense, let me tell you, this story cost me my marriage, my peace of mind, and a piece of my soul I'll never quite get back. Before I get into this, do me a favor and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if stories like mine hit you where it hurts, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Helps Uncle Mickle keep bringing you the truth nobody else wants to talk about. Now, let me take you back. This all happened about 3 years ago. In a quiet little town most folks would drive right past without noticing. Tree-lined streets, modest houses, the kind of place where people wave at each other but don't ask too many questions. That was my world. That was my comfort. I was 47 at the time. Worked steady, paid my bills, took pride in what I built with my own 2 hands. I wasn't rich, but I was secure, and to a man my age, security feels like winning the lottery. And my wife, well, her name was Jennifer. We'd been married just over 12 years. Long enough to stop counting anniversaries. Long enough to think you really know someone. Long enough to trust without checking your blind spots. From the outside, we looked solid. People used words like stable and lucky. She handled the social stuff. I handled the practical things. I paid the mortgage, handled the investments, kept the lights on. She kept the house running, kept us connected to friends and family. At least, that's what I believed. I remember one specific morning like it was burned into me. Jennifer was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone, coffee untouched. I asked her if she was feeling all right. She looked up, smiled, that same familiar smile, and said, "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." I didn't question it. Why would I? Married men don't interrogate every tired look. We learn to accept answers at face value. But something about that smile. It didn't reach her eyes. At the time, I brushed it off. Life gets heavy. Marriage goes through seasons. That's what I told myself. That's what men like me always tell ourselves when something feels off. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that Jennifer had already moved on emotionally. That she wasn't just distant, she was waiting. Waiting for my health to fail. Waiting for my heart to give out. Waiting for paperwork to do the rest. And the worst part? She assumed I'd never see it coming. I was still living under the illusion that love protects you. That loyalty is permanent once spoken out loud. That a shared history means shared intentions. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And the moment I finally realized what was really going on, that's when everything changed. Because once a man understands he's being measured by what he'll leave behind instead of who he is, he stops playing the role he was assigned. And that's where this story truly begins. Before all the suspicion, before the cold realizations and sleepless nights, my life had a rhythm to it. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just steady, predictable days. And at my age, that kind of predictability felt like a blessing. Jennifer and I lived in a 2-story house I bought a year before we married. White siding, small porch, a maple tree out front that dropped leaves like clockwork every fall. Inside, everything had its place. My boots by the door, her throw pillows arranged just right, the faint smell of coffee most mornings, even before the sun was fully up. We weren't the kind of couple that fought loudly. We disagreed, sure, but it was usually quiet, polite, almost respectful. If something bothered her, she'd sigh instead of shout. If something bothered me, I'd let it go instead of pressing the issue. Looking back now, that silence wasn't peace. It was avoidance dressed up as maturity. Most evenings, I'd come home around 6. She'd already be there, usually on the couch, television murmuring in the background. We'd talk about our days in broad strokes. No details, no depth, just enough words to prove we were still connected. At least, that's how I saw it. On weekends, we hosted dinner once in a while. Friends from work, neighbors, people who'd say things like, "You two are such a good team," or, "You're lucky to have each other." Jennifer would smile at those comments, squeeze my arm, play the role perfectly. And I'd believe it, because believing felt easier than questioning. Financially, things were solid. I'd always been careful with money, saved early, invested conservatively, made sure everything was documented and protected. I handled all of that. Jennifer never showed much interest, and I didn't push it. She trusted me, she said. That trust made me feel useful. Needed. I had a will in place. Nothing fancy. House to her. Savings split between her and a couple charities I cared about. Retirement accounts clearly listed. I remember joking once, "If I croak tomorrow, you'll be all right." She laughed, but it was a strange laugh. Short, almost rehearsed. I didn't catch it then. Or maybe I did, and I chose not to look at it too closely. My health was decent, but not perfect. High blood pressure. Some chest tightness now and then. Doctor told me to slow down, manage stress. Jennifer started hovering more after those appointments, asking questions, reminding me to take meds, watching me when I climbed the stairs. At the time, I thought it was care, concern, love expressed quietly. Now, I know better. There were small changes, subtle enough to ignore if you wanted to. She started asking more about what would happen if. What would happen if I couldn't work anymore? What would happen if I got really sick? What would happen if I died suddenly like my father had? She framed it as planning, responsibility. I framed it as her being practical. Truth is, those conversations always left me uneasy. Like I was being measured, not comforted. Like my absence was being rehearsed. Still, I kept going. Work, home, dinner, sleep, repeat. And every night, before turning off the light, Jennifer would roll over, kiss my cheek, and say, "Good night, Mickle." No warmth, no lingering, just habit. Now, let me ask you something before I go further. Have you ever had that gut feeling that something was off, but you ignored it because you didn't want to believe it? Tell me in the comments. I want to know I'm not alone in this, because that's where I was, standing in the middle of a life that looked fine on the surface, while something underneath it all felt hollow. I didn't know what the warning sign meant yet, but it was there, quiet, patient, waiting for me to notice. And soon enough, I would. The first real crack in the picture didn't come with shouting or tears. It came quietly, the way most life-changing moments do, disguised as something ordinary. It started with a doctor's appointment, routine checkup, blood work, EKG, the kind of thing you do once a year when you're trying to convince yourself you've got control over the future. Jennifer insisted on coming with me, which was unusual. She'd never shown much interest before. In the waiting room, she sat stiff beside me, scrolling through her phone, but not really reading anything. When the nurse called my name, Jennifer stood up immediately. "I'll come back with him," she said, a little too quickly. The doctor wasn't alarmed. Numbers were a little high. Stress was doing what stress always does. He talked about diet, exercise, cutting back on work. Jennifer asked more questions than I did. Specific ones. Detailed ones. What are the risks if he doesn't slow down? What happens if his heart gives out? Would it be sudden? The doctor answered calmly, professionally. I laughed it off, said she was worrying too much. But on the drive home, she was quiet. Not concerned quiet, calculating quiet. Like she was organizing information in her head. That night, I woke up around 2 in the morning. Couldn't sleep. Chest felt tight. Not painful, just uncomfortable. I rolled onto my side and noticed Jennifer wasn't facing me. She was turned toward her nightstand, phone in hand, screen dimmed. I didn't think much of it until I heard my name. Not spoken. Typed. I saw it reflected faintly in the mirror of the dresser. My name in a message thread. Multiple times. Long paragraphs. When she noticed I was awake, she locked her phone fast. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Just couldn't sleep." There was that smile again, the one that stopped short of her eyes. Over the next few weeks, things like that kept happening. Small moments. Pieces that didn't quite fit. She started asking about paperwork, where things were kept, who our lawyer was, whether my life insurance was still active, whether the beneficiaries were up to date. I answered casually, trying not to sound defensive. But inside, something was shifting. A quiet alert system turning on. Then came the comment that changed everything. We were sitting at the kitchen table one evening, dinner dishes still out. She was staring at me, not unkindly, but not lovingly either. "You ever think about how fast things can change?" she asked. "All the time," I said. "Why?" She shrugged. "I just mean, you never know when someone could be gone. One day they're here, next day, nothing." She said it flat. No emotion. Like she was talking about the weather. I felt a chill move through me. Not fear. Awareness. I nodded. Didn't push. Didn't ask follow-ups. But that night, I didn't sleep much. The next day, while Jennifer was out, I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I checked her laptop. I didn't go digging through everything. I wasn't looking for an affair. I didn't even know what I was looking for. But what I found was enough to tell me this wasn't paranoia. Search history, legal forums, estate planning, spouse inheritance when partner dies suddenly. How long does probate take? What happens if no children? My hand shook as I scrolled. There were messages too. Not romantic ones. Practical ones. Conversations with a woman named Lisa. Her sister. "She doesn't know anything yet," Jennifer had written. "Just need to be patient. It'll be worth it." Worth what? I closed the laptop and sat there for a long time. No anger yet. Just disbelief. Like my mind hadn't caught up to what my eyes were seeing. That night at dinner, Jennifer talked about her day like nothing had happened. I nodded, smiled, played my part. But inside, I knew something fundamental had changed. I was no longer just a husband. I was a variable in someone else's plan. Folks, pause for a second. What would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted her right then? Or would you have waited and watched? Drop your answer below. I'm curious what you would have chosen. Because in that moment I made a decision. Not to accuse. Not to explode. But to observe. And that choice led me straight into the darkest truth of my life. Once you decide to watch instead of react, everything sharpens. Every word carries weight. Every pause feels deliberate. I started noticing patterns where I'd once seen coincidence. Jennifer became careful. Not distant, strategic. She checked in on me constantly, but not the way someone does when they're worried. It felt like inventory. Like she was confirming I was still functional. "How's your chest today? You take your meds? You feeling okay walking up the stairs?" Each question landed heavier than the last. I started keeping quiet notes in my head. Timing, tone, context. She wasn't asking because she cared. She was asking because she needed data. One afternoon, I came home early from work. Earlier than usual. The house was quiet except for Jennifer's voice, drifting from the living room. She was on the phone. "He's been having symptoms," she said. Pause. "No, he doesn't suspect anything." Another pause. "I just need things to stay the same a little longer." I stood frozen in the hallway, key still in my hand. My name came up again. Not with affection, not with concern, just logistics. I backed out silently, heart pounding, and drove around the block until my hand stopped shaking. When I came back inside at my normal time, she greeted me with a smile like nothing had happened. That was the moment hope died. Still, I needed proof, not for confrontation, but for my own sanity. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to our lawyer. I didn't tell him everything. Just asked questions. Hypothetical ones. About spousal inheritance. About what happens when one partner passes unexpectedly. He answered professionally, unaware he was outlining the future my wife was quietly preparing for. A week later, I checked the home security app on my phone. Something I rarely looked at. There were recordings from when I was at work. Jennifer meeting with someone I didn't recognize. Papers spread across the table. Documents. Folders. Estate planning folders. My name was on them. I watched those clips over and over. Her posture calm. Focused. No tears. No hesitation. She wasn't mourning a possibility. She was preparing for it. Midway through all this, I need you to understand something. This wasn't just betrayal. This was my whole life crumbling. Have you ever been blindsided like this? Someone you trusted completely, just destroying everything? Share your story below if you've been there. Let's heal together. The final confirmation came in the cruelest way possible. I pretended to feel unwell one evening. Nothing dramatic, just enough to test something. Jennifer's reaction was instant. Not panic, not fear. Efficiency. She grabbed her phone, stepped into the hallway, and made a call. "I think it might be happening sooner than we thought," she whispered. That was it. No misunderstanding. No denial left to cling to. I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to my wife quietly coordinate my potential death, like it was a delayed shipment. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I felt empty. That night, as she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and realized something painful and freeing at the same time. She had already buried me in her mind. I was just a process now, a timeline, a payout. And in that darkness, another thought took shape. Slow, cold, undeniable. If she thought she was waiting me out, she had underestimated me. Because I wasn't dying. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Betrayal has a strange effect on a man. At first, it knocks the air out of you, leaves you hollow. But once that emptiness settles, something else takes its place. Clarity. I stopped reacting emotionally. Stopped searching her face for traces of the woman I thought I married. That woman was gone, or maybe she never existed at all. Either way, mourning her wouldn't protect me. So I went quiet, not withdrawn, controlled. I still played my role. Ate dinner, asked about her day, kissed her goodnight. But inside, I was working through problems with a calm I hadn't felt in years. The first thing I did was see a different lawyer. One who didn't know Jennifer. One who asked questions instead of assuming answers. I laid everything out, the searches, the calls, the documents, the behavior. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't need to. He listened carefully, then leaned back in his chair and said something that stuck with me. "You're not dealing with grief," he said. "You're dealing with intent." Those words flipped a switch. Together, we went through my estate piece by piece. Assets, accounts, beneficiaries, contingencies. Everything Jennifer assumed was locked in stone. And I changed it. Not out of anger. Out of self-respect. I adjusted the will so that if anything happened to me unexpectedly, Jennifer would receive only what was legally unavoidable. The rest went elsewhere. Charities, trusts, and people who had actually stood by me in life. We documented everything properly. Quietly. Legally. Clean. Next, I protected myself medically. Updated emergency contacts. Gave copies of my medical power of attorney to people I trusted. Made sure no single person could make decisions alone. I started recording things too. Not secretly, just accurately. Dates. Times. Conversations. Patterns. Insurance. I wasn't planning revenge. I was reclaiming control. Emotionally, though, it wasn't as simple. There were nights I lay awake, wondering how long she'd been thinking this way. Whether she ever loved me, or if I'd just been a means to an end from the start. But each time those thoughts surfaced, I brought myself back to one truth. I was still here, and she didn't know what I knew. That gave me space to breathe again. She noticed the change. Of course she did. "You seem calmer lately," she said one night. "I feel better," I replied honestly. She smiled. Relieved. Satisfied. That smile told me everything. By the time I finished restructuring my affairs, I wasn't angry anymore. I was steady, grounded, prepared. This wasn't about hurting her. It was about refusing to be erased. Here's where I made my choice. Now I want to know, do you believe in revenge, or do you believe in walking away? What's the right move when someone destroys your trust? Comment below. I want to hear both sides. Because what I chose next wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was precise. And when the moment came for Jennifer to learn the truth, she never saw it coming. The moment came on an ordinary Tuesday. No thunder. No warning. Just a calm knock on the door from reality. Jennifer came home from work earlier than usual, her energy sharp, almost excited. She set her purse down carefully. Too carefully. Sat across from me at the kitchen table and folded her hands like she was about to deliver good news. "I talked to my sister today," she said. I nodded. Said nothing. She thinks we should finally get our affairs in order. Just in case. There it was. The push. I looked at her for a long second. let the silence stretch, felt my heartbeat steady instead of racing. "That's funny," I said calmly. "I already did." Her eyes flickered, just for half a second. "You what?" "I updated my will," I said. "Quiet. Even. A few weeks ago." Her smile froze. "You didn't tell me," she said. "I didn't need to." The room shifted. You could feel it, like air pressure dropping before a storm. "What exactly did you change?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. I leaned back in my chair. "I made sure everything went where it belonged." That's when her composure cracked. "Where it belonged," she repeated. "Mickle, I'm your wife." I nodded again. "I know." She stood up, started pacing. "You're not sick enough to be doing this kind of thing," she said. "This is premature." There it was. Her fear. I pulled a folder from the drawer beside me and placed it on the table. Slowly, deliberately. Inside were copies. Signed, dated, legal. Her hand shook as she flipped through them. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. Mid-climax, let me ask you something. Are you rooting for me right now? Or do you think I went too far? Be honest in the comments. Uncle Mickle can take it." She looked up at me then. Not angry. Terrified. "You changed everything," she said. "I corrected it," I replied. The silence that followed was heavy, thick, final. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then stopped, because there was nothing left to say. No leverage, no control. Her plan had evaporated in front of her, and in that moment, I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief, because for the first time in months, I wasn't waiting anymore. She left that night, packed a bag, slammed the door harder than she ever had in 12 years of marriage, and I sat alone at the table, staring at the empty chair across from me, knowing one thing for certain. I was alive, and I was free. The house felt different after Jennifer left. Not emptier, quieter, like something heavy had been removed from the air. For the first few days, I barely moved. Slept on the couch, ate when I remembered, let my phone buzz unanswered. I wasn't heartbroken in the way people expect. There were no dramatic sobs or late-night begging calls. Just exhaustion, the kind that comes when your body finally believes the danger has passed. Jennifer did try to reach out. Texts at first. Careful ones. "I think we should talk. You blindsided me. I don't understand why you did this." I didn't respond. Then came anger. "You betrayed me. You humiliated me. You let your paranoia ruin everything." Still, I stayed silent. Because here's the thing. Once you've seen someone's intentions clearly, explanations stop mattering. Words become noise. A week later, her sister Lisa showed up unannounced. Stood on my porch like she had something to say that would put everything back in order. She didn't even get past the doorway. "Whatever you think you know," she said, "you've got it wrong." I looked at her calmly and replied, "I know enough." She left after that. No threats, no apologies, just frustration. The divorce paperwork came soon after. Clean, efficient, almost ironic, considering how much planning Jennifer had already done for a different ending. Because of the changes I made, there was no drawn-out battle, no leverage, no financial incentive to drag things out. She walked away with what the law required, nothing more. And me, I stayed in the house, under the maple tree, in the life I built. Emotionally, rebuilding wasn't fast. Trust doesn't snap back into place just because the danger's gone. I second-guess people. Not suspicious, cautious. There's a difference. But something unexpected happened too. I felt stronger. Not bitter. Not hardened. Just clear. I started focusing on my health again. Not because someone was watching, but because I wanted to stay alive. Started walking every morning. Lost weight. Slept better. Funny how removing the wrong person can improve every system in your life. Midway through all this, I catch myself wondering, would I do it all the same way again? What about you? If you could go back and handle your worst betrayal differently, would you? Or was the pain necessary to become who you are now? Let me know below. Jennifer and I haven't spoken in over a year now. No closure talk. No final explanation. And honestly, I don't need one. Closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you take when you stop waiting. There are still moments, certain songs, certain routines. 12 years doesn't vanish overnight. But those moments don't control me anymore. They remind me that I trusted my instincts, even late, that I protected myself, even quietly, that I didn't become cruel just because someone else was, and most importantly, that I survived something meant to erase me. Which brings me to the final part of this story. Not the betrayal, not the will, but the lesson that stayed. Time has a way of sanding down the sharp edges of pain. What's left isn't anger, it's understanding. I used to think betrayal was loud, explosive, that it came with shouting matches and slammed doors. But I've learned it's often quiet, polite. It smiles at you across the dinner table and asks about your health while planning a future without you in it. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Love doesn't blind you. Fear does. Fear of being alone. Fear of starting over. Fear of admitting the life you defended isn't what you thought it was. I stayed longer than I should have because I wanted the story to stay simple. Because I believed history guaranteed loyalty. Because I confused peace with silence. But the moment I chose myself, not loudly, not cruelly, everything shifted. I didn't win because I hurt her. I won because I refused to disappear quietly. So here's my final question for you, and I really want to hear your thoughts. Is it better to forgive and move on, or to make sure they understand exactly what they lost? There's no wrong answer. Drop it in the comments. Because every one of us draws that line differently. Some walk away. Some speak up. Some change the paperwork and let reality do the talking. What matters is this. You don't owe anyone your destruction just to keep the peace. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. And remember this, the strongest revenge isn't punishment. It's survival with clarity.